Hi, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Christy Lamagna, and you are here for some information on how to master the arts of menu planning and spending. Many of you are experts at this. Some of you may be new at this. So my goal today is to, much like when you create a menu, make sure that there's a little bit of something for everyone, to put some expert tips in here, have some things for beginners, a little bit of everything, but most importantly, make sure that you end this webinar with more information than you started with, and to give you tips that are practical and that you may not necessarily have thought of yourself or that you may not be using, that you can incorporate, that are free, easy, enjoyable, and will actually really enhance the quality and the success of your meetings. So what's the most important thing is not to look at obstacles, but to look at the goal. So one of my favorite quotes is, if you can only see obstacles, you've taken your eye off the goal. So as we look at food and beverage, what I want to do is look at everything from a strategic perspective. What is your goal? And once you start thinking about the goal, there are an incredible amount of ideas that will start to come to mind, and instead of being overwhelmed with the amount of choices, the amount of people that you need to feed, the amount of money that it's going to cost, if we just focus on what is it that we're trying to achieve, this will get a whole lot easier, and it actually becomes a lot of fun. So again, you have either a board meeting, a small conference, a lunch meeting, a gala dinner. It doesn't matter what the function is. The end result is you want these folks to leave well-fed, happy, and kind of almost excited about the food experience that you just gave them. And there's a lot to consider when you need to put these things together. It's about timing, it's about logistics, it's about costs, it's about the format of the food. So when you think about that, now it used to be you had to worry about vegetarians, but now you have vegans, you have gluten-free, you have lactose-free, you have what's trending right now. You know, for a while it was cake pops, and now it's food trucks. There's so much that's going on, and then on top of that, what's in season, what's organic, that's another big thing, the whole farm-to-table trending. There is a ton that you need to consider. But some basics are always going to remain the same. So our first couple of slides are going to be really about things that no matter who you are or what you're planning, here are some universal truths. Universal truth: people don't like to wait on lines, whether it's a bar line or a buffet line. People struggle when food, if they're doing stand-up food, it drips, it's messy, it takes more than one bite to eat. People don't like food that they don't understand. And people don't like when the food gets in the way of conversations. So as you're planning things, you want to make sure that your salad doesn't have onions in it, that your hors d'oeuvres don't require a dip in order to taste good, and then it's going to drip on people. You want to really use some common sense as you're planning your menus. The other thing, and this is really hard to do, is remember that it's not about you. So I have never had a cup of coffee in my life. I don't know what it tastes like. I have no desire to have a cup of coffee. That said, I make sure that not only do I have coffee at my functions, but I have an abundant amount of it, that it gets changed out regularly. When you look at menus, your impulse is to say, oh my goodness, I would love to have, or oh, I really don't like. And you have to remove your personal opinion from the equation and think about your audience. So keeping in mind that it's not about you, really difficult, but really important, because if whomever it is who's eating the food can tell that you plan that menu because, well, Christy doesn't eat sweets, so none of our events, we always have fruit sorbets for dessert because Christy's a health fanatic. It's not about me. So you want to make sure that you take your information, the facts that you know about your group, and make sure they come into play, but that your personal taste preferences do not influence the menu, because it's not about you, and that's hard. The other thing we need to make sure is that we think about the big picture. If you're having a multi-day event, what are your guests having for breakfast, not just today, but what are they having tomorrow, the next day, however many days they are there? If they're doing an off-site one evening, what type of restaurant did you take them to? If it was Italian, then for you to do an Italian buffet for the next afternoon's lunch or the next afternoon's dinner, that doesn't make sense. But a lot of times we get a little bit myopic and we think about this is what the hotel menus are, but we don't think about what's happening outside of the hotel or outside of our host menu. So we want to try and get really adventurous and really creative with our food, but we need to make sure that while we're doing that we're not repeating things. So if you decide that doing a sushi bar is fantastic for your opening reception, and then the next night, you've got, a heavy seafood menu, you really want to make sure you keep things varied and that you look at the entire event as a whole, not just one meal at a time. One of the things that as you are planning all menus, another forever truth is air, land, and sea. So you want to do some kind of poultry, which is your air. The land, you need to do something of vegetables, and you want to do some seafood. You can also do beef. But air, land, and sea, really important. And if you make sure you have all of those things at every meal, then you're going to manage to please just about everyone. It does get a little bit more complicated now because you used to be able to do, let's say, a vegetable lasagna, and that would make your vegetarians happy. Now with folks who are either gluten-free or lactose-free, vegetable lasagna may not work. So you do have to think about, is your vegetarian entree or item, do you also have something that's vegan? So do you put the sauce on the side? Do you put the cheese on the side? So you do air, land, and sea, but you have to do air, land, and sea and think about, some of your exceptions to the rule and make sure that all of your options do consider them as well. One of the easiest ways to get someone cranky is to wait too long to feed them, or to have them be at a buffet or at a meal where there's nothing they can eat. And there are times when someone's dietary restrictions are so incredibly specific that you cannot necessarily please all the people all the time, but you do need to be sensitive to, if you've got some gluten-free, if you've got some lactose intolerant, that you do make sure that those folks do have options, even if it's have this salad dry, don't put a dressing on it, or the chicken that's supposed to go on top of the salad is served separately so that the vegetarians can have it, the vegans can have it, and folks who want to put the chicken on it can. Really simple, goes a really long way. The other thing you want to realize, it's a lot of details, it's a lot of people, and you're not always going to hit the bullseye. Regardless of what the entree is or what the food that you're serving, chances are someone's going to be unhappy. And if you imagine that you can please 100% of your audience, you're going to set yourself up to fail. And whereas it's not about you, you do need to enjoy the process. You do want to have this be fun, and you do need to be proud of the work that you're doing. But it's really important that you don't, if somebody walks out grumbling, the steak was too well cooked. Okay, and so maybe medium doesn't work for them, but you can't please everyone. So do just remember, you've got to, conceptually, people from all over the globe coming to your meetings, you're not going to be able to hit the mark 100% of the time. The other thing is that since many meetings have people globally, as you're planning menus, you want to think about, for if you've got folks coming from Asia, are you serving fish? Are you serving green tea? Do you have some kind of seafood for your breakfast? Can you bring in, it's a very simple thing to do to allow some of your international guests feel like they're a little bit more at home and that you've thought about them, is if you're having a welcome reception, can you get the local beer or a very popular beer from that country to your welcome reception? So do you have a dark ale if you've got a lot of folks from London coming in, or Tsingtao if they're from Asia? That's not a hard thing to do, and it does make people feel welcome. And food is a very emotional experience. It's a very interactive experience, and people take comfort in things that they know and that they are familiar with. So just because you can't necessarily serve German food, for the 5 German folks who are at your event, if you have some German beer there every night, you don't need to buy a ton of it, and that would make them feel welcome. And again, it's just, food is very emotional. It makes people very happy when they are well fed and they have food that they enjoy. So if you focus on your goal, which we'll talk about, the style of food, the type of food, the timing. If everything of that focuses on the goal, you're going to have a successful meeting. So when we talk about the style of food, again, is it formal? Is it informal? Is it a stand-up reception? Is it a sit-down dinner? Is it a buffet? The type of food goes to ethnicity. The timing of the food, that's also very important. You don't want people to wait 4 or 5 hours between perhaps your lunch and your dinner if lunch was a light salad. You also want to make sure from a logistics perspective that you have double-sided buffets if you need them, that your server to guest ratio is on target, because having phenomenal food and having everything planned out perfectly, but then having half the room being served, half the room not, have the food cold by the time it gets to you because the distance from the kitchen to the ballroom is too far and they didn't have the food covered. These are things that you really need to think about and walk through. And one of the things that is incredibly important is that before you get there and before you serve these meals, as often as possible, you think through all of those details, and if it's at all possible, for you to do a tasting. So, which brings us to the whole concept of every single person there is a VIP. So if you can do a tasting so that you can see not just what the food itself looks like, what are the dishes that it's being served on look like? Is the food three-dimensional? You know, one of the great things about asparagus is it stacks really nicely. So if you put that on top of a piece of meat so that the food's got a little bit of a three-dimension, if you've got, you have the chef create like a cheese waffle that's very easy to make, or a cheese stick that can stand straight up. Can you use the food to be decorative? You want people, if you look at a plate that has been beautifully prepared, people feel very important and very special. It doesn't necessarily mean that the food cost a lot, but the way you present it can make people feel very appreciated and very respected. And that's, you know, a big part of your goal is to make your audience not only feel welcome, but feel honored and that their presence is important to you. Food's a really great way to do that. So how you present that food, the china that it's served on, what is your place setting going to look like? All of those details make a difference. The other thing, while we're talking about food presentation and how it is served, oftentimes when we do seating arrangements, we do open seating, which is fine because you want people to oftentimes to be able to just sit with folks they like or that they have already met and that they know. But a great opportunity exists every time people sit down for a meal because information is shared. It's an opportunity to build relationships. It's an opportunity to start relationships. So food can be so multi-purposed. So why not make your lunch function, your dinner function, any function where there is seating, that you take as many VIPs or executives as you can and put one at each table. So you can have open seating -1. And one executive sits at each table. And that allows for me to perhaps get to meet a VP from a different district, get to sit with the CEO, which I would ordinarily not get to do, sit with my manager, which is then gives me a little bit of face time with someone who's potentially in charge of my raises and reviews, which you can never get too much face time with the boss. It can really be an opportunity to build relationships. Another thing that you can do is, if money is tight and you're looking for clever ways to sponsor meals and give a sponsor some added value, is if you're doing prearranged seating or if you've got set tables, let the sponsors have, you know, maybe the first 5 tables or with the executives, let the sponsor have a seat at as many tables as possible or at strategic tables and have that be part of their sponsorship package. When you try and get someone to sponsor a meal, you want to find out from them what is their goal, and if their goal is FaceTime with your audience, to speak and to interact, this is a great way to do that. If their goal is that they want to put a product into someone's hands, it may be then that you're putting a gift in a welcome bag, and this particular idea doesn't work. But if they are looking to reach out to your audience and you don't necessarily want to give them time on a stage, this is a great way to allow them some dedicated time because they are guaranteed to be sitting with your audience, and it costs you nothing. And actually, in that instance, you're making money. One of the other things you want to do is you want to meet the chef for so many reasons. Too often we look at the menus that the hotels give us and we imagine that that's our only option, is if this is what they're telling me that they serve, this is what I have to choose from. The chef is your friend. The chef is eager and interested more often than not to meet you, to prepare something that's off the menu, that's not on the menu. If you think about how tired you are of hotel food, think about how tired the chef is of making it. So oftentimes, I've virtually never been told no by a chef. If I ask for a meeting, I will sit down with the chef and say to him, okay, I see your menus. Tell me, what is your favorite dish to make? What is your specialty? And you may have a French chef who loves to cook Italian food, and the hotel doesn't, that's just not where he can showcase that. You may have a chef who loves to do farm to table, and that's not what everyone wants, so he's not able to push that forward. Ask the chef, what does he suggest? Ask the chef, who else is in-house over your dates, and what else is he making? Because if he's putting on a gala dinner for someone in the ballroom next door, and they're doing surf and turf, and you can't afford that, your meeting is perhaps, let's say, 100 people, and the group next door is 300 and they're doing surf and turf. If you find out from the chef what they're doing, and you ask him, can we tag along on their menu? Can we gang onto their menu? You can potentially get a meal that you couldn't have otherwise afforded because the group next door is getting it at a discount because they're buying so much of it, and then you can enhance the quality of your menu and the quality of your food and actually not spend as much money as you otherwise should have. What you can also do is say to the chef, this is my budget. This is either my budget for the day, I have $100 a day, or you can break it up by meal. I have $35 for breakfast, $65 for lunch, $100 for dinner. What you can do is actually talk to the chef and say to him, would it be easier, I have $100 to feed each person per day before tax and service charge. Would it be helpful for me to break that down by meal, or if I say to you for $100 a day, please give me what you think would be the best way to feed my guests, knowing that one night they're going off site and they're having this type of meal, or we're going to be here for 3 days. And here are the demographics of my group, because that's incredibly important. The age of your group, whether they're male or female, men tend to eat more than women. Generation Xers have different food preferences. They're really about organic and farm to table, Generation Y, whereas baby boomers sometimes are still meat and potatoes. And your group specifically is going to have its own unique preferences. It's your responsibility to make sure that as you go through your events, as it's progressing, keep track of how much coffee do these guys drink. Do they kill the breakfast, or does it not get eaten? Are they heavy drinkers? Do they drink just beer and wine? Do they drink hard alcohol? Pay attention, because data is power, and the more information you have, the better you can make your events going forward, because you're going to spend your money in the right places. So when you meet with chef, make sure that, find out what's your favorite thing to prepare. I have only 45 minutes for dinner, and I need it to be, formal. What can you make that's quick, that looks beautiful, and then he can give you a suggestion. Or, this is an awards dinner, it's going to last 3 hours. Let's talk about how we make a 3-hour meal progressively more interesting, how we set it up so that each course is more interesting than the next, but they're still focusing on the stage, but that the food isn't just boring and doesn't blend into the background. You can make food a centerpiece. So if you don't have a lot of money and you say to chef, I would love for you to do an artisan bread display for me. Can you make me some prototypes of what a beautiful bread basket would look like? That could be your display as people walk in with some Votive candles, and then you don't have to spend money on centerpieces. The other thing you can do while we're talking about bread, think about when you go to a restaurant and someone puts a basket of bread in front of you. Now, if you're like me, the first thought is, I miss bread because you don't eat it anymore. But let's imagine you're allowed to eat bread today. When you reach in, you open up the napkin off the basket, and you reach in to grab that dinner roll, piece of Italian bread, biscuit, whatever it is, when it's warm, how much happier are you than when you reach in and it's cold? Heating the bread doesn't take time. Doesn't take money. It takes a little time, But think about the difference of when you cut into a warm slice of bread and eat that or put butter on that versus it's a cold roll. Didn't cost anything extra. People don't think about it. People don't ask for it. It's easy to do. Have your bread be warm. It then can't be on the table before guests sit down, but that's an easy thing to work out from a logistics and a timing perspective. The other thing that you can do, again, it doesn't cost anything and it looks beautiful and it's a nice touch. Have on the table preset glasses of water, and you do a coin of lime and a coin of lemon. So you've got a lemon and lime wedge on the glass. It's colorful when you walk in. If I don't want the lime or the lemon, I can put it on my bread dish. If I do, it's, oh my gosh, isn't that nice? Nobody ever thinks of that. I always have to ask, and I ask for lemon, and they always give me lime, or vice versa. This way, they're both on the plate. It adds a pop of color. It gives you some height to the table. It costs you nothing, and it's just one more element of decor that you can add, and it's another simple thing. If you're a water drinker, and you always put lime in your water, or you always put lemon in your water, think about how nice it would be to walk in and have that waiting for you. If you don't, you put them to the side. Having it there isn't going to annoy someone who doesn't use it. Having it there for someone who does, those little things make a big difference. The other thing I talked about briefly is do tastings. If it's an important meal, do a tasting. How much sauce do they put on things? Is it three-dimensional? Is the meat sitting in a puddle of sauce? Could they swirl the sauce along the sides of the plate instead of having it sit in a puddle? Once you start looking at the food and thinking about the presentation of it, it really does bring all kinds of ideas to mind. I would love, can we do purple potatoes? Because we're doing a white fish and we're doing, roasted potatoes, but wouldn't it be great if the potatoes were purple? Because it would really give the plate some pop. Great idea, may not cost you anything extra. Or, instead of doing broccoli, let's do carrots because the carrots are a beautiful color. The carrots are our company color. Is your company logo the same color as food? If you happen to be lucky enough to have green or orange in your company logo, you can say, our vegetables tonight were, in honor of our corporate colors. If your corporate color is pink or blue, you're going to have a tough time with dinner, but so make sure that when you're looking and you're doing your tasting, you factor these things in, and you can get adventurous. If you want to, your group isn't necessarily all that adventurous, maybe you do a salad that's got who knows, Cajun shrimp on it to give people a little bit of a taste and a little bit of a flair and get them to try something new. And you know what? If they pick the shrimp off the salad, it's not the end of the world, and then dinner is something that they may all recognize. But you can absolutely infuse some fun into your menus and get people to expand their palates, and it makes a difference. And a lot of this, it doesn't have to be expensive. The other thing that is fun to do, and you have to have the right size group, and there are a lot of spin-offs on how you can do this and how you can customize it for your group. Ask people to submit their favorite recipes. So, mom's lasagna, dad's ravioli. I'm Italian, I always think pasta. But have people submit their favorite recipes. And perhaps for an evening, you show these recipes to chef and you say, can you do 5 of these? Can you do 1 of these? Whatever it is. And turn that into a conversation starter, a complete icebreaker of, oh my gosh, this is my mother's meatloaf. And when the food is labeled, it will say, Christy's mother's meatloaf. And it's just fun. It's easy. It's conversational. It's different. I've never seen anyone do that besides us. And it's a lot of fun, and it doesn't cost you anything. And again, people feel included, and they feel welcome, and they enjoy it. Food makes people happy if you do it correctly. So create relationships with your chef. It's really going to help you tremendously. The other thing, one of the things you want to keep in mind is right now what's trending is small bites. Because food is very social, and people like to try things. So if you give them what's called, a amuse-bouche, a little bit bigger than an amuse-bouche, which is just a little taste, but you allow them to sample many things, they enjoy that, and that's fun. So, and the containers or the packaging that you put things in. I chose this slide because what's great about this is you can see exactly what's in these. The first one has fish, the second one is vegetarian, and the third one is an Italian piece. I label everything always, but in this instance, you can tell instantly. And again, we don't want long lines. We don't necessarily need, we don't want people dilly-dallying. You can look right at that. You know exactly what's in it, and you can grab it. How many times have you picked something up and, well, for me, I go to eat it, and then I'll say at the last minute, is this seafood? And they'll say, oh, yes, that's shrimp. It's not labeled. So, you know, the more often you can take the mystery out of what people are eating, the better off. And again, if you look at this slide, everything is very colorful, everything is very fresh, and that's appealing. The other thing that I would highly recommend that's fun, it's visual, it's inexpensive, it can be considered adventurous depending on who your group is. Do a water station, do a hydration station. People are drinking more and more and more water these days. So why not do a lemon water or a lemon lime water, orange water, one of my personal favorites, cucumber water. You can have chef throw all kinds of things into water. It's attractive. It gives it a nice flavor. It's adventurous. It's different. And again, if you think about, you know, if you get invited to an awards dinner in your social life, and you know that you're going to the local hotel for a sit-down dinner, and it's going to be prime rib, rubber chicken, you know what you're going to get, and it's boring, and it's because no one's thought it through. So have chef throw some lemons in water and have lemon water, lime, whatever it is that you think will work, but it's so simple and it's attractive. Every day you can do a new flavor, and you can make your own flavors, and you can even say to folks, vote on what tomorrow's flavor is. Do you want it to be, kiwi strawberry? Do you want it to be lemon lime? Do you want it to be lemon strawberry? Whatever it is, we're talking fruit. It's not expensive. It's pretty. It's colorful. It draws people to it, and you're not spending money. This doesn't have to be expensive. I teach my college students that I say to them, what's the most important thing you need for a successful event? And my students almost always tell me that it's money. That's not what it is. It's creativity. If you are creative, money's helpful, and you do need money, but you need to be creative with your money. I would imagine all of you have been into someone's home that's very wealthy, and you say, well, money doesn't buy good taste. It's not about what the money can buy. It's how you're using it and how creative you are. So a hydration station, how many of you have seen those? There are some people I see on the chat that have done them. That's right now still ahead of the trend. That's not what people are doing. It's easy, and if you'd like to be a trendsetter, please do take that idea. I think your guests will really be happy about it. The other thing that you can do, and the beauty of this is so many of us are going green, this will allow you to eliminate those horrifying water bottles that just pile up and pile up. People perceive that when they pour water from a pitcher, they're not inclined, and it's just a perception that so many people have. If you're pouring water from a pitcher, they don't want that water. They'd rather have a bottle of water. If you put two in front of them, they're going to take the bottle. When the water is in these containers, you lose that whole I will only drink bottled water stigma. And what you can do is you give them a water bottle that you can either talk to the hotel about, can people just leave these on the table at the end of the night, and will you guys wash them so that every day, we've got new sterile water bottles, or write your name on it and bring it every day. The challenge with that is depending on what they put in it, they have to wash it themselves. But you can talk to the hotel about, we're going to do these water bottles. Can we put them through your system? Will you guys wash them and put them out every day? Is there a cost for it? Perhaps, but the difference between what you're paying per bottle for water and what you may pay for them to clean these containers, I think you're going to come out ahead. The other thing, it's so important to label food. Again, we don't want long lines, so you want the food labels to be large, easy to read, double-sided, and making sense. So, it can say this contains seafood, this has nuts, this is vegetarian-friendly, vegan-friendly. So, and that's really helpful, is if you're going to have, organic, maybe you write that in green, or you just have some symbols, and you let people know that everything that we're doing, if it's organic, if it's vegan, if it's, farm to table, that's going to be labeled. People will give you credit for that. That will make people happy. It will make the chef happy because he gets to brag. The hotel gets to show off a little bit. Labeling things, super important. The other reality of it is, again, some people are deathly allergic to things. You don't want to be the planner who inadvertently killed an attendee or sent them to the hospital because you missed something really basic, and it frightens me how many people are still not labeling their food. I have seen that some hotels are now trying to charge for the labels that go in front of food. I've also read that someone brought a suit because gluten-free, lactose intolerant is considered a health issue, and you cannot charge people extra because they have a health issue. So I don't necessarily, that legislation I don't think has been signed off on yet, but there is if hotels are going to give you that issue, if you email me, I'm following that legislation. I can send you that when it comes through so that you can share that with the hotel. So yeah, just make sure things get labeled. And the other thing, and I'm fascinated by this, how often a hotel will make the labels and they put them in front of the wrong things. So you're looking at the cilantro rice and it's, brown rice, or make sure that you walk the buffets and that what this stuff says it actually is. It's unbelievable how often that's not the case. One of the things that you can also do, again, perception is everything. Money can sometimes be tight. It's all about being creative. People want to feel important. I had an event that we had no money, but this was an awards evening. It was a reception before we did an awards presentation. And because the budget had gone, or the economy had gone really badly, they were having this meeting, but they really slashed the budget for the reception, for the awards reception. But the expectation was still that this was going to be a very high-end, elegant, wonderful affair. I have no money. So what we did was we sat in a room and we said, okay, what makes people feel important? I'm like, okay, white glove service, silver trays, people in tuxedos. And what we came up with was we had the wait staff all in, their blacks, their formal wear, and we served champagne with strawberries on the side of the glass. When you're holding a champagne flute, you feel very fancy. Champagne is for special occasions. You only drink champagne if something, most of us only drink champagne if something very noteworthy is happening. It's traditionally associated with money, honor, and elegance. You put the strawberry on it, and once again, it's a little extra color, it's a little extra flavor. You have sparkling water and sparkling cider as well on the trays because, again, you want to make sure you're covering all your bases. And the joy of champagne is the majority, not everyone, the majority of people are not going to drink champagne. They sip it, they like to hold it, they feel fancy with it, they like to look at the bubbles. They're not going to knock down multiple glasses of champagne. So we gave these folks, they walked into the room, we had classical music playing overhead because we couldn't afford a trio. And there are our servers all in a line, holding silver trays, wearing white gloves, with glasses of champagne with strawberries on the side. When I tell you, these people were blown away. They felt so honored and impressed, and it was so fancy. We didn't spend any money because, again, people didn't drink a lot of champagne, and it worked out beautifully. They raved about how special they felt. It was kind of like smoke and mirrors, but it worked, and we were clever. So, and it's always make it look like you did it on purpose. So instead of we have no money, we're going to use drink tickets, or we're going to do a reception that's got no alcohol at all. We made it. We did it on purpose. We did champagne. It hit our goal. It was classy. It cost us virtually nothing, and everybody left happy. So make it look like you did it on purpose. Be creative. It's worth so much more than actual financing. Again, going back to presentation, if you look at this picture, these popsicles are beautiful. I mean, people are going to be drawn to this. It's colorful. I've mentioned before that food can be multi-purposed. Food can inspire conversation. Food can enhance a mood. Food can create a mood. It's difficult to be cranky while you're eating ice cream. It's difficult to be serious when you're eating ice cream. So if you're trying to warm up a group or you know that after a break you're going into a team builder or something where you do need the group to be a little bit loose, kind of a little more relaxed, or you've just got a group that's kind of uptight, give them food that's delicious and that they'll enjoy, but that is fun to eat. So, you look at these popsicles, they're beautiful. The presentation of it is beautiful, and the perception is, wow, this is fun. Oh my goodness, look at how fun this break is. Now, you could have had those popsicles wrapped in paper, put out on trays, same food, but the difference in the presentation makes all the difference. And now all of a sudden you've created an experience, you've created an atmosphere, you've given them, their senses are more engaged, it's more visual. This is a really great way to take what could have been an ordinary break and turn it into an experience. And that's what food is, it's an experience. When we go to buffets or receptions, one of the things that you can do is have action stations. Those are interactive. Those are visually appealing. If I'm not someone who likes to necessarily mingle and feel a little bit awkward, I can go to an action station, and it's a great place to hide because you're standing there watching someone do something instead of standing in a corner with a drink in your hand. The people who are serving from those action stations, if you ask them to engage with your guests, they can talk about, this beef was raised down the road, it's organic, it was farm to table, so whatever it is, you can, if you're doing a pasta station, you can have the chef turn this into something fun and make it interactive, and he can sing while he's serving making the pastas. You can turn this into an experience. It doesn't cost extra to say to the staff, can you just engage with my guests? With this whole theme for tonight is about interacting and it's fun. So, how can we make you a part of our evening? And what can we do? And perhaps one of your servers sings. Perhaps somebody knows a whole lot about the history of wine and cheese, and you do a wine and cheese pairing and tasting as part of the reception. Ask. When is the last time anyone thought about the people who were serving the food? And wondering, can the bartender, can he flip bottles in the air? What's his specialty cocktail? You have all these people at your disposal. Everybody has a story. Everybody has an expertise. Everyone has something that they want to share. We go in there and it's, okay, there's my bartender. There's my maitre d'. There's my guy who cuts the meat. Well, look at them as people and say to them, you know what, I would love to meet the folks who are going to be working my reception. I'm creating this theme, and I would love to just sit them down in a room and say, this is my goal. How can you help me? And again, for all you know, your maitre d' sings arias, and how thrilled would he be to be able to do that? It costs you nothing. If money is tight, I mentioned before, sometimes you can sponsor meals. And if you're going to sponsor a meal, how do you get that point across? If you don't want these folks talking from the stage, or you can't have them hang a banner or do a gobo or have their slide in your presentation, what other clever ways can you incorporate them into your meal? This is an example of, Volkswagen. They had button candies that they made that they put on top of their cupcakes. If you look, it's a white cupcake with blue frosting. So again, it mirrors their theme. You can have their logo put on napkins. You can do a gobo, which for those of you who don't know is it's a steel disc that you put over a particular type of light, and it can shine on a floor or a wall, and have the sponsor's logo there so that it can be featured prominently for one meal, but not for all your meals. So again, you can be very, very creative, but if you sit with chef and say, I'd love for you to help me figure out, so-and-so is sponsoring this, how can we incorporate them into our meal? And perhaps their headquarters is in San Francisco. So for that meal or for that appetizer, you're going to do soup in a sourdough bowl, or you're going to do something from the region where that company is headquartered and just tie it in. It's not going to cost you anything. It's just a matter of think about it and how can you make sure that you're including the goal, and the sponsor's goal is to get some face time or some awareness, and your goal is to not give over your entire session to that sponsor. So how do you find that happy medium? And food, believe it or not, can really be a great way to do that. The other thing you can do, for those of you who haven't seen it, if you look at this pasta, these happen to be heart-shaped, but you can get pasta in the shape of your logo, different colors. I mean, you can get pasta in food in general in all types of shapes. In this instance, you need to be careful because sometimes chef will not make food that they have not ordered. So you would have to, because they don't know, how is the consistency of this? Is this going to come out to my standards? So if you like this idea and you get a bag of it as a sample and you talk to chef and say, I'd like to send you a few bags of this to prepare and make sure that this meets your standards, I would like to serve this, then conceptually you'll get that buy off. They would then order it for you. But that would then allow you to do this for the sponsor. The chef gets to do something new. It's very clever. The other thing is, as you're working with your chef and all of these folks, you're asking them to do more than they usually do. It's really important that we don't just ask the hotel staff for their help, but that we not only thank them along the way, but that there are gratuities handed out at the end of this. One of the things that we've started to do is renting printers is very expensive. So when we get to a city, we'll just run out and buy an all-in-one printer that costs $130. And at the end of the event, we'll identify throughout the week who would we like to gift this one, this two, or these three printers to. And we'll talk to the hotel manager and say, we would like to give this printer, or we'll talk to our CSM and say, who on the team has young kids or has kids in college that could potentially use this? May we give this to so-and-so? And then we donate the printers, or we gift the printers at the end to some of the people on staff, in addition to giving them cash. But that's a really nice way to be green, be generous, and if that doesn't work and you want to donate them to a local school or charity, you can then get the tax write-off, and you also save the money in shipping the printer there and from renting, because renting is usually just crazy expensive. Stretch it. You don't have a lot of money. You don't know what to do. Go back to the strawberry and champagne idea. Stretch items are carbs. Stretch items can be fun and interactive. So think about if you were to throw mashed potatoes in a bowl and put that out at a buffet. Why are there mashed potatoes here? What is this? You put those mashed potatoes, and this is an old idea, but it's just a great example. You put those mashed potatoes in a martini glass. You then have chives, bacon, chili pepper, anything, mushrooms in bowls in front. So it's kind of like a sundae bar, except it's with toppings for mashed potatoes. And you now have a mashed potato bar. If you want to do it with roasted cauliflower mash, so that you're doing it without the carbs, but it's fun. From a dietary perspective, it's going to potentially appeal to more people. Then do it with cauliflower and do cauliflower mash. There are tons of ways you can do this. You can do it with sweet potatoes. You can do this with pasta. So you do a pasta station, and again, pasta is cheap. And if you have more people than you expected, and all of a sudden you need to do a stretch item, stretching is carbs. And if you make it look like you did it on purpose, you put it in a beautiful glass, you put in toppings, you hire someone to turn this into an action station, it looks like you did it on purpose. Do it with intent, and you can make the fact that I just fed you, pasta fun. Martini glasses are fabulous. Shot glasses are fabulous. Little espresso cups. Use traditional serving pieces in non-traditional ways. People love it. So I could talk for 6 hours, and we're starting to run out of time. So I'm just going to speed through a couple things. One of the things you want to think about, those wonderful carbs we just talked about. They do make you tired. When you serve lunch, do not go carb heavy. Pasta is not a good thing at lunch because your PM session, you're going to have people sleeping, and that's not cool. So you want to make sure that you think about the food, the timing of the food, and the reaction of that food is going to have on people's digestive system. You give people a ton of sugar and then you ask them to sit still for 3 hours, they're going to be amped up on a sugar high. So think about the food and its reaction that it's going to have with people. For those of you who have groups who potentially go out and drink a lot in the evening and may show up the next morning dragging a little bit, greasy food is a surefire cure for a hangover. So for you to know that the night before, they either had the night on their own and you're in Vegas, so they probably drank a lot, or you did a reception and everybody drank a lot, again, think about logistics. The next morning, you want to have fried eggs, bacon, something greasy for those people who are hungover. For those who are not, have another option. But greasy food for a hangover, surefire cure. Surefire cure. Very, very quickly, things to save money. Do things on consumption. Granola bars, chocolate bars, bags of chips instead of bowls of chips. Sometimes whole fruit, an apple, a banana, anything that you can do that's self-contained that they can put back on a shelf after your break, if it hasn't been consumed, is going to save you money. Avoid salty snacks at receptions because it increases drinking. Keep in mind the rule of thumb that the first hour of an open bar, people drink 2.5 drinks per person per hour during the first hour of an open bar. So if you're only going to have a 1-hour reception, 2.5 drinks, maybe 2 drinks because it's only 45 minutes in the hour, because the first thing they do is they walk in and they get a drink, they throw it back because it's free, they get a second one, you call them into dinner, so they kill that one and say, I'm going to go grab one more before I walk into dinner. Your first hour is really expensive, so keep that in mind. Do a breakfast presentation rather than a formal dinner if you don't have a lot of money and you can't afford to keep folks through dinner, but you want to do a presentation. So sometimes a breakfast or a lunch is smarter. And again, I'm trying to go really fast now because I don't want to miss your questions. You can host a progressive offsite if the size of the group permits, just a fun, creative way to make something not what they expect, more enjoyable, turn it into more of an experience. Lighting. Fantastic secret weapon. If you light things look beautiful, so think about the lighting in the room. Ask your production company, if they're hanging lights anyway, do they have any pin spots? Are you using pin spots? Do you know what they are? If not, learn about pin spots. They're fabulous. Bring your food to life. Again, multiple layers of food. Everything shouldn't be flat on a table. Have things staggered. Chef or whomever's setting up the food should be able to stack it for you, and it'll bring it to life. Again, another thing about lighting, this is the same room with and without lighting. It makes all the difference in the world. Your production company should be able to help you figure that out. Timing is everything. We've learned that most of our folks don't eat breakfast first thing in the morning. They want it at the AM break. So we've stopped serving breakfast at breakfast, and we now serve breakfast at 10 instead of at 7:30. For our group, it made a difference. Food can be fun. The rest of these slides I'm just going to let go because I know we've got some questions and I don't want to ignore those. So, wow, we have all kinds of folks asking questions, so thank you for that. Someone had asked, how do we determine what a food intolerance allergy is versus preference? So what we do is during our registration, we will say to them, what are your dietary restrictions? And we will point out, because Corrine points out that, someone will order a kosher meal, it costs a fortune, and then they choose not to eat it because they decide, oh, well, whatever we're serving tonight actually looks better. We do let folks know that, so if I respond to Corrine in registration and I say I need a kosher meal, what traditionally I would suggest is to make a phone call and say, Christy, we have your kosher meal ordered. We'll make sure that one of our event staff knows who you are and make sure that you get that meal hot, on time, served with everyone else. Just to be clear, we will not have a regular meal for you. We're taking you out of our food count. So if you're not sure if you're going to want kosher for all the meals, please let us know, because we will not be able to serve you what the rest of the group is having, because your allocation is going to kosher. Oftentimes that will help. How do I handle Lenten meals? Okay, so easy. For Lent, we don't eat meat. Now, again, not everyone is going to be observing Lent. So if you've got a Lent situation, you do make sure that you either have phenomenal vegetarian options. A really good way to do that might be to have a stir fry, do a really fabulous, beautiful vegetable stir fry base, and then you have beef, chicken, or shrimp that you can put on top of that stir fry, and you are very quietly observing Lent, because I may not even realize it's Lent, and all I know is I have 3 different options to put on the top of my stir fry. You can also do tofu. You can absolutely do a seafood option if you're going to do a buffet, but make sure you have other options. Lent is usually not that difficult to manage if you're creative. The stir fry is a really easy way to do it. You can also go back to the pasta stations, and you can do pasta, and you can have linguine with clam sauce, linguine with red sauce, linguine with vegetables. So again, you make the base, and you let people pile whatever they want on top of it that will meet their particular food criterion. Let's see. Can you get a link to the legislation on food labels? Yes. If you all, if anyone wants it, I will get it, and I can give it to Caitlin, who's organizing this, and make sure that she gets that out to you. Someone asks, given the plethora of food and service options, how do you go about figuring what the percentage of overall event budget should be allocated to food? So one of the things that's going to happen is, when you get a room block and you book your space, your hotel is going to tell you your food and beverage minimum is X, because they're looking at it saying, based on your number of people and the amount of meals that they are going to be serving, and they know what the average price is for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and breaks, they're going to say to you, your food and beverage minimum is this. What I do is then look at that menu and say, okay, that food and beverage minimum has me, there's no way I can feed these people all this food, so I need to figure this out. Or, based on what my group eats, we're going to blow this minimum out of the water, because this is for a continental breakfast, and I know I serve hot food. This is for, this doesn't even have our welcome reception in it. So a big part of it is, what is your goal? And if this is about team building and interacting, and you really need these folks pumped up, food's a big part of that. You can't say to them, I want your best, and I want you to be excited and to feel valued, and we really need your best performance out of you, and then serve them flat meats for lunch. So I would say, when you're looking at your event budget, the hotel's going to help, because they give you what your food and beverage minimum is. But go back to your goal, and if you say to the person who has set your budget, okay, you're giving me, after all is said and done, after I pay for the sleeping rooms and the room rental and our production, which those are static costs that, I can't do anything about that. Now I've got $75 per person for food, and I'm supposed to be feeding them 3 meals a day. I want you to see that based on your goal, this is not an adequate amount of money. So we either need to change our goal, shorten the day. What would you like to give up? What would you like to change? And put that onus back on the person who's saying, A, I have no money, and B, this is what we need to do. And then you put on your creative thinking cap and figure out, how do I make more with less? How do I do the mashed potato bars, the champagne receptions? You can absolutely not spend a lot and do great things. So, and sometimes it just requires you to be a little bit more creative and for them to kick in a little bit more money. There are so many questions. How do I label my foods? I asked the facility to do it. There have been times where I've made my own signage. If I don't have a lot of faith in the property that they're going to do a good job, I will do it myself. I will ask during a tasting or as I do my sites, can I see what a food label looks like? And I look at what they have created. Is it dirty? Is it on nice cardstock? Is it printed terribly? Was it printed on white 8.5 by 11 paper that they cut out unevenly? So I know if I have to do it myself or if the hotel is going to do it. I also sometimes, if this is something that's being sponsored, I'm going to potentially put the sponsor's logo on the food if they're sponsoring dinner, or I may want my event theme on every single piece of printed collateral or collateral that exists, be it electronic or print, and that's another option to do it. You're going to print it in the colors of your event logo or your theme, so you may want to print it because that's going to help you achieve another goal. Every single thing you do can trace back to your goal if you think about it. So even your food labeling can trace back to your goal. There are so many. Let's see. In the case of people taking advantage of alcohol provided, what's the best advice for cutting people off? One of the things that I will do is inexpensive, thematic, and could be a little bit adventurous and a little bit fun, is we'll create a punch that will be, it can be named after a sponsor, it can be named after the company, it can be named after the person who won, your overall top employee. You can call it the, Pat McCarthy punch, because Pat McCarthy won an award, and you can every year make it a tradition that you just you name a drink after that person. You shut your bar down. If you know that your group are heavy drinkers, half an hour, before the reception ends, you shut that bar down. You don't serve hard alcohol, and you just do punch, because you can control the amount of alcohol in that. You make sure that your bartenders, and I put this into my contracts, that they are certified to serve alcohol, and you have them also help you determine who has had too much and who hasn't, so that they are your partners in serving. And I've absolutely had to walk up to folks and just say, I don't want to be rude, but we can't serve you anymore, and I'm really sorry, and I don't want to embarrass you. I need to let you know that I think you're done for tonight. And it doesn't make me popular, and I will never do it in front of a group of people, but I will walk up to someone and say, can I just talk to you real quick? And I'll say, I don't want to embarrass you. I want you to know. And if it becomes a scene, that's unfortunate, but I usually try and get that person out of the room. If you do know you have a group that drinks too much, one thing that I also do, if you know that people getting smashed is going to happen, and for whatever reason that's okay, order wheelchairs. And I've had in the past wheelchairs on my BEOs, so that I can have my team wheel people back to their rooms, because it's not necessarily a one-of-a-kind incident in my world where we've had to wheel some of our executives back to their rooms. So, never dull. What do I think of hosting a mashed potato bar for lunch? I think that's a bad idea if you are going to put them back into a room after lunch, because they're going to be into a carbohydrate coma. I would rather, if we were going to do something as a stretch item for lunch, I would rather do a vegetable pasta, meaning zucchini that they spiralize and turn into noodles, or a stir fry, something that's, it can be colorful and fun, but I wouldn't do a mashed potato bar or a pasta bar at lunch. It's again, people are going to fall asleep. Is there a set formula for making guarantees, and is there a cushion? So the cushion is what's called an overset. You want to find out what the hotel's overset policy is. If you guarantee 100, more likely than not, their overset policy is between 3 and 5%, so they'll cook for 103 to 105 people. What we do is we stagger our guarantees throughout the day based on both common sense and the history of our group. If I have 100 people, I do not guarantee 100 people for breakfast. I may guarantee 45 people for my 7:30 breakfast, 100 people for my AM break, 90 for my lunch, 85 for my PM break, and 95 for my dinner. Because if you think about it, human nature is a lot of people just grab a cup of coffee and go. You want to make sure that you've got coffee cups to go with lids for the morning, especially because people are going to grab and go, and they're going to walk in at the last minute, grab their coffee, go sit down. AM break, they're still there. Now they're hungry. Lunch, some people disappear to go check their phones, leave for meetings. You don't get everybody there. PM break, people are starting to leave, so you don't have to guarantee everybody. And then they usually come back for dinner, because that's more high profile, whereas people aren't going to notice if they slip out of the back of the room towards the end of the day. So I stagger my guarantees based on what I know the behavior of my audience to be and the likelihood of everyone showing up. I think I have about just very, very little time left. Is there an easier way to deal with dietary restrictions at an event, and how do I manage it? Again, air, land, and sea, and make sure that you put things, it's very easy to put things on the side. So if I make sure that, if I'm going to put even Caesar salad, I don't put the cheese in the Caesar salad anymore. The cheese goes on the side, so that if you're a vegan, you can eat the salad, it doesn't get ruined because you put cheese in it. So if you're going to do, a salad that's got some things that would take it from being vegan, from vegetarian to not being vegan friendly, then, put stuff on the side and realize that you can't help all the people all the time. So if you have a lactose intolerant, gluten-free, kosher vegetarian, there's a point at which you have to say to someone, Stephanie, I'll be honest with you, I so want for you to be comfortable and happy, but I'm not going to be able to meet all of your needs, so this is what I am able to do for you, and I hope you understand. Because I've got 100 people, and I need to make sure that everyone is well cared for. So I kind of address that. So I would love to be able to answer all of your questions. You will get these slides. I will show you just, well, actually at the end, I believe, is a way for you to get in touch with me. But if you have other questions and if there's anything I can share with you, let me know. And that's about it. So thank you, everybody. I hope you found this useful. And anytime you need anything, give me a yell. And thank you so much to PCMA for giving me this time, and I hope you found it useful. Thanks all.